Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with Jazz Hammond B-3 Organist, performer, and educator Carey Frank. He is from South Florida, and these days he is calling Los Angeles, California, his home. He's promoting his latest release, a 2017 CD featuring Bruce Forman called Something to Remember Him By. Over his great career, he has performed with so many cats like the great Dr. Lonnie Smith and many others. He is very busy as a touring performing artist, recording artist, arranger, composer, and teacher. He's got great stories, and you should hear them all. So please get to know him and dig this interview, my friends.
Thanks for taking a minute out today to talk about the new album. I appreciate it.
Oh, man, thanks for asking me.
Something to Remember Him By with Bruce. Talk to me about this album. We have a bias around here on Neon Jazz. We really dig the vibes, and we really dig the Hammond B-3. So up front, I'm just going to tell you there's a bias.
Okay, cool.
So
thank you very much. So my grandfather was a singer named Don Cornell. He was a crooner, kind of big in the 40s, and I inherited his perfect condition 1938 Gibson L5.
Wow.
And it's been sitting in my parents' closet in Fort Lauderdale, Florida for many years. Just, I live in LA, and it's just been there, and I finally decided to safely ship it out to LA just so at least it's with me. And then I had the idea, or a friend of mine kind of gave me the idea, and I went with it to make an album playing like a tribute to my grandfather, playing songs that he recorded and performed often, and using the guitar somehow. So I thought it would be cool to do like an organ trio kind of album, but something different. So I thought, take away the drums. I kind of did some research. I couldn't find an album with that instrumentation where it's no drums, just organ and guitar. And so the guitarist, Bruce Forman, who's one of my favorite guitarists ever and lives in LA, and I met him when I did my master's at USC. He's one of the professors there. Yeah, so I reached out to him, and he was happy to do it and played the guitar on the album. And then my friend has a matching Gibson amp from the same decade, so it's got the same stripes on the amp as it does on the guitar case, and so that was cool to use that amp for the session. And
that was it. As we established, you're in LA now, but you grew up in South Florida. So give me an idea. You kind of talked about your grandfather a little bit, but give me an idea of how you specifically fell into not only the music groove, but jazz, and how that was cultivated in your early life.
Yeah, I'm from South Florida. To be honest, I didn't have much of a relationship with my grandfather, Don Cornell, just because by the time he passed away, I was still pretty young, and I just always remember him being, an old man in a robe. But I did know everything about his music. I have all of his many CDs and cassettes and records in my parents' garage. As well as the guitar, I also inherited all of his orchestral and big band scores. Actually, a friend of mine in Florida who works a lot with the Glenn Miller Orchestra and older jazz groups like that. He's helping me in looking through some of them and trying to sort out what's usable and what's not. Anyways, but so between him and then my grandfather on my dad's side, my grandfather was a klezmer musician and entertainer in New York and then eventually South Florida. When I was in high school, by the time I was good enough on piano and keyboard, he started hiring me as his sideman, and I was working for him all throughout high school, and then did my undergrad in Orlando, where I worked at Disney World and Cirque du Soleil and all those theme park things, and then eventually moved to LA and did my master's at USC and been here ever since.
Between your master's and your undergrad, talk to me a little bit about what you learned in a formal environment. You obviously had a level of music in your genes. You grew up with it, but, it costs a lot of money and it takes a lot of effort to specifically study music like that. So what did you get from that?
Sure. I mean, the biggest thing is I got a community and a networking. Yeah, I mean, when I wanted to move to LA, I knew I've always wanted to move to LA. I couldn't imagine moving to LA without coming here for something like a job or school. I moved here not knowing anyone, I did my master's here at USC, and I treated it first as a networking tool, and then second as also just to learn what I needed to learn. Same thing with undergrad. It was, I mean, everyone's a little different. For me, it was what I needed musically, and also just to help with networking. It's how I got a lot of the bigger jobs while living in Orlando. It's how my teacher in undergrad at University of Central Florida, his name's Kerry Danielson, he got me my job at Disney World, which just kept leading me to bigger and better things. And yeah, so with music, a lot of it is, and all arts, I think a lot of it is you got to do your own work. Like, no one's going to hand it to you, but a lot of it is also with networking and just taking advantage of every tool possible. And school is a big part of that.
Was it really that big of a culture shock to go from South Florida out to LA for you?
Not really, I think. Just because, in music, there's such a good community. It was pretty similar out here in LA than it was in Orlando, just bigger. Yeah, just bigger.
So you played with a lot of people over the years. You played with Dr. Lonnie Smith.
He just came over to my place for Thanksgiving, actually.
I got to tell you, and I always talk about this, I'm fortunate enough to interview cats like him, and Dr. Lonnie Smith had to have been one of the more transformative human beings in that short span. His level of spirituality and just kindness and knowledge, he reminds me of the leader of the Jazz Jedi Council in Cloud City. He's sitting up there with the other jazz disciples, and they are just constructing the enigmatic yet clear path to the rest of humanity, and that's what I felt from him. He was amazing.
Yeah, he's one of a kind. Man, he's amazing.
With that as kind of a subtext, with him and with others that you played with, obviously what you get from them influences who you are. But yeah. I want to know, what do these older cats that have been around for a long time give to you that help you influence the younger guys that you get to play around?
Well, I'd say community. Keep it going, and things are different than it was when they were my age. It's everything is online. Everything is about social media and Instagram and all that stuff. And I notice a lot of bands, younger bands, they'll kind of make a great, beautiful-looking social media thing without really focusing on the music yet. Keeping the community alive by just going out and seeing live music as much as possible, and making live music as much as possible. Yeah. Again, I know it's different now, but it's big thing is to post videos of yourself playing by yourself, and a lot of people become semi-online famous because of that, but then you never actually see them out playing with other people or even just out playing live. I think that's the most important thing. I think the community, keeping that going.
And I think that's what a lot of the older guard wants to have happen, is that proverbial jazz torch continues to be lit as brightly as possible.
Yeah, I mean, clubs are, there's not as many jazz clubs or even just live music venues in general that exist, let alone, willing to pay money to musicians to perform there. And so it's just, we got to keep that going. And also at a higher level. Sometimes especially recently, I don't know, I've seen or heard not the best music in like hotel lounges and stuff, but it's, some people like to blame the bookers or the hotel managers, but it's really on the musicians, the bookers, and they don't know any different. And I think it's just up to us to just keep the level high and the music good.
The one thing that's always interesting to me about jazz is that, the educational programs nationwide at the college level is always top-notch. And there's obviously very talented players. There's a lot of interest in jazz. So let me ask you this.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think there's ever going to be a resurgence, not to the days when it was on the radio and that was the only thing that we were listening to, but do you think we're ever going to get a resurgence to that day where jazz is going to be craved and going to become a big thing because people may get tired of this manufactured notion of electronica and studio produced, get more aggro in the way they want to have their music delivered?
I don't know. It's funny when La La Land came out. If you search like hashtag jazz, that or if you search hashtag like La La Land, jazz videos would come up, and I think if there is some big something in the entertainment in movies or something like La La Land where it's featured around jazz and it reminds people what it is, and then yeah, I think so. A big part of it is parents showing their kids what to listen to, and that's kind of what influences what they like. And if the parents don't, what I don't know, relatively good or acoustic music or non-electronic music, then they won't show their kids, and then they just won't even know it exists to know whether or not they like it. If something influences that, then yeah, I think it'll come back. I hope
right
so.
on. Yeah, I do too. Over your life, you've had pretty good success with what you've done. You've been very active. You play with a lot of cats. How do you feel about your career?
Thanks. I think it's going great. It seems to only keep getting better. So hopefully it does only keep getting better. Yeah, it can all change overnight. Literally, I mean, my last big thing was I toured with Tedeschi Trucks Band over the summer with Derek Trucks, and that was literally, I got the call out of the blue, and then I had 4 days to learn all the music and then go on this big summer tour, and then things only get better from there, just from, again, networking and meeting new people, and yeah, I'm really happy with where my career is, and I'm happy that it's only getting better.
Yeah, cool. The one thing I always hear is that when people go to LA, it kind of opens this proverbial big door for them to all kinds of different opportunities. Is that the way you feel this has happened for you?
Yeah, for me it has. I know it's, it doesn't just happen. You don't just step off the plane and then it happens. You really got to do the work, and I kind of lucked out in a lot of ways. I picked an instrument, or the instrument picked me, that just not many other people in LA do. Specifically playing Hammond organ, and then even more specifically dragging around a real Hammond organ to almost every gig I do every night. Lives in my minivan, and it just so happens not many other people in LA do that. And so I just kind of lucked out with that. And then I also lucked out I just had the idea one day to start bringing a GoPro to all my gigs and recording as many gigs as I can, and then just posting random videos online, and that kind of helped in my quote-unquote audition for, which I didn't even know I was auditioning for the Tedeschi Trucks Band, as well as other gigs that it just helps with, and people call me for that they say they've seen my video or someone shared my video, and I've been very lucky since I moved to LA. Just a lot of things that I chose to do without knowing that it was a good thing. It was just something I thought I should do this.
This next question of mine is kind of fueled by the fact that, we're here in Kansas City in one of the 4 to 5 cradles of jazz in the world. Yeah. And, there's a lot of history on 18 and Vine. There's a lot of bespeckled history that we all kind of glamorize here. And, when I get down on 18 and Vine, I look around and see all these old ghosts bumping into each other. We have the Mutual Musicians Foundation. So my question is this. If you could get into that jazz DeLorean, Doc's sitting at the wheel, you get to 86 miles an hour, what digits are you punching in? Where are you going and who are you going to see?
Wow. I'd love to go to the 60s. Love to see Jimmy Smith and Jimmy McGriff and at their heyday. I'd love to see, specifically like with Hammond organ, I'd love to see like from the beginning when it was first introduced and just moving through the year. It's only been around for not that long. I'd love to see the beginning of how it started and then how it morphed into what the instrument has turned into today.
I dig it. Let me ask you this. Why do you love jazz?
It's a creative genre. It's, I can play the same song, or I've never played the same song twice, or the same way twice, whether it's a solo piano thing or with a group I've played with for 5 years. We've never played that same song the same way twice, and that's part of it. Versus a pop band, you know, it's got to be played the same way twice or every time you play it, because there's dancers and there's pyrotechnics and lights that have to do with the way you play it. That doesn't happen in jazz. I don't know if that's good or bad. It's yeah, and then also just my parents played music growing up. They played a lot of jazz, a lot of my grandfather's music, a lot of newer jazz. I think also, just to sidetrack, a lot of jazz from the 60s and earlier, and then even later than that, they chose pop tunes of that time, like musical theater songs, and especially Hammond organ players like Charles Earland. He did a lot of pop tunes of that time, like More Today and Yesterday was a pop hit. You know, now it's an oldies, and I think a lot of things that are missing nowadays in jazz repertoire are just not missing, but just maybe people just got to start switching up the set list, start trying to incorporate some current tunes into the mix. I always do that when I perform, and I totally see that people dig it. You know, I can see it in the audience. I'm not just playing another jazz standard that they may or may not have ever heard, and it makes a difference.
Absolutely, it does. Yeah. So let me ask you this. This is my final question for you.
Sure.
And I want to know this. Everyone has a version of who you are. Your family, your friends, those that watch you live and that purchase your music. But when you wake up and you face your day, who do you think you are?
I think I'm just another musician in LA who's trying to make it and pay rent, and hope that I have a gig tonight, and hope I have a gig tomorrow.
Very cool. That's the ultimate existential answer. I dig it. That's very cool.
Thank you. Yeah, those are all great questions.
Thank you, man. I love the album. It's been a pleasure to speak with you. I appreciate you taking your time out.
That's awesome, man. Well, thanks so much.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to yet another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest players in Los Angeles, New York, Florida, Kansas City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to Carey for his time, honesty, and all the stories. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino on the iTunes Store. Visit Neon Jazz at YouTube.com, and for everything Neon Jazz, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.